Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of The New Standard. And you're checking out the program on October 16th, 2024. The title of this week's program, the Wednesday show, is Should Mike Tomlin Let Russell Wilson cook? Should he let Russ cook, get into the kitchen, and cook some delicious treats? But with that, as always, if you want to participate in the program, sure you hit me with a like and a subscribe. You can also participate in the program with hitting us with a super chat. I want to say big up to Ali Howard Species 56118. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. Welcome to the program. And we're coming on a little bit late, but that's the big question. The big question is, should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? But before we jump into that question, I want to jump into some numbers from the last one that stood out to me from the game, and also just some bigger holistic numbers that kind of stood out. It kind of resonated with me as we go into this week's game. The first number that jumped out at me from the victory against the Las Vegas Raiders was the they scored on 6 of their 11 drives. They scored on 54.5% of their drives. They scored 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals to eclipse 30 points for the first time this year. I mean, I wish I could put sound effects in the show, but eclipsing 30 is something that I did not necessarily think they would do. So that just jumped out at me, that they scored on over half their drives. You would love to have seen them score more in the red zone, been a little more efficient there, utilize and convert some of that short field into some touchdowns, more scores. However, I'm not going to complain that an offense that looks like this scored 30 some odd points, and I don't care who it was against. 30 is 30. I don't care if they scored 30 points against your mama and them. It was 30 points. I mean, nobody cares who it was against. Sure, it might say something more about your team and about your offense if you do it against the Jets, who happen to be the Steelers' next opponent, or you do it against the Ravens, or you do it against a very good defensive unit, i.e. the Steelers. You put 30 on the Steelers, it says something about your offense. But for this offense, when the floor is so low, scoring 30 in a game is a big deal. The other thing that stood out to me on the negative side with the offense was, and this is probably why we're having this whole conversation of, should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? They had under 150 net passing yards. I think they barely had over 100. They had like 115, maybe about 120 net passing yards. I may not be absolutely right, spot on with the number, but it was close to that. It was under 150. Man, and if Corey Hatcher was listening to the program, what's up to my guy, Big Richard Corian? If Coach Hatch was listening to the game, he would tell you 150 net passing yards, Jiminies. They had more punt yards, I'm sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a majority of the games, they had more punt yards, more net punt yards than they had passing yards. But Rome was not built in a day. That's all I'm going to say. Rome was not built in a day. Some other holistic numbers I want to look at is the number 21. Blackjack, baby. The Steelers are averaging 20.7, but because I'm feeling frisky and you're checking out the new standard, should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? because I'm feeling frisky, I'm going to round it up. I'm going to give them 0.3 of a point, and we're going to round this up to 21. The Steelers are averaging 21 points a game. Let's break out the champagne. Let's break out the champagne. I'm trying to think of the song that's in my head. Let's toast it up. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Let's toast it up. I probably got the lyrics up, but we need to be celebrating because the Pittsburgh Steelers are averaging 21. And big up to you, Ollie Howard Species, who said he predicted 33-13. Big up to you. Solid prediction. You're the man. Why don't you just give me your prediction right now, Ollie Howard? And I'll favorite that, and we'll pop that prediction in at the end of the show. So, solid performance. The offense is starting to, the tide is starting to raise the boats. Again, I'm terrible with cliches, but it's starting to happen. The offense is slowly getting better. And so what if it was against the lowly Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Raiders? Another couple of numbers that stood out to me. Kind of on a negative side on the defense. TJ Watt is TJ Watt. He's Superman. He's the man with a cape. One number, though, kind of stood out to me, which was interesting. They only got 1 sack in the game and 4 quarterback hits. And this was an Oakland Raiders team that was not doing very well in pass protection. I thought the defense overall played solid football after that first drive, but I was a little disturbed, I'm a little concerned that the Steelers weren't able to get more pressure in this game. Only got 4 quarterback hits and 1 sack. Those 2 numbers of the game will probably be lows for the season. And last but not least, just keeping it on a positive, on a holistic thought, just looking at some of these numbers for this defense over the first 6 games. And these are all PFF rankings. They rank number 2 overall in defense, number 3 in run defense, number 2 in tackling, and their pressure grade is number 2. And overall, I think they're top 3, or excuse me, they're number 2 overall in defense. And that's the one thing that jumped out to me when I watched the game, and I've watched these first 6 games, is that they're tackling really well. But let's pull back the curtain and let's get to the main topic. Should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? And according to Rich, he should let Russ pour milk. And let me just say this. When it comes to cooking, there's home cooks, there's line cooks, there's sous chefs, there's executive chefs, and there's your kids that are 12 that's just learning out how to cook. The issue is, part of the issue is also not just should he let him cook, but if he cooked, what the hell is he gonna cook? Is he gonna cook rice and beans? He gonna cook Franks and some Franks and wieners and beans, and cook baked beans? And what's he gonna cook? PB&J? I mean, what's he gonna cook? That's also a part of this question. And the one thing when I'm hearing and reading stuff on X, a lot of sports pundits, Steeler Nation, a lot of sports media guys, did they forget that Russ is cheeks? Russ is cheeks. Did they forget that the league thinks he's cheeks? He's a guy. Just riddle me this. How many of you listening to this show and who will listen to this show can get paid to not come to work? So you leave your old job and they pay you. They didn't like you so much, they just said, look, we're going to get rid of you and pay you to not come back. Please don't come back, and we will give you an exorbitant amount of money. we just got to keep in mind he's getting paid almost $40 million to not show up to work. Just put that in context. This is the guy that Steeler Nation is clamoring for. This is the guy that Steeler Nation wants to start. What that tells me and what that's indicative of is quarterback play has been bad for the black and gold for the last several years. And like Lori Toploff said, she wish she could. We both wish we could. I wish I could get 40 million or whatever would be the comparable sum for me to get exorbitantly paid by my employer to never show up again. They gave him 40 million to kick rocks. I mean, not just flick rocks, kick rocks. This is who you're talking about. And also, everybody quotes his numbers. I think he had 24 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. Go watch the games. You will not remember any of the touchdown passes. And there's a stat, I think he was 20 touchdown passes to 1 interception in the red zone. Who cares if you throw 2 touchdowns in the red zone after you're getting beat by 17 points? That doesn't matter. That's called inconsequential. So this whole argument stems around 2 quarterbacks who, and I love this article from Mike Sando. Mike Sando is an outstanding reporter from The Athletic, and he ranks guys in terms of quarterback tiers. He has quarterback tier 1 through 5, 1 being the highest. And let me give you guys an example of who's in tier 1. Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. He has ranked both quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, as tier 3 and tier 4 guys. And he put Russell Wilson as the last quarterback in tier 3. Let me give you the definition of what a tier 3 quarterback is. A legitimate starter, but needs a heavier running game and or defensive component to win. A lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. That sounds like Russell Wilson to a T. However, the running game for the Steelers is not very good right now, even after Najee just ran for over 100 yards against the Los Angeles, Oakland Raiders. Let me give you where he's ranked overall in tier 3, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is ranked 22nd overall. Now, interestingly enough, and let me read some of the comments that the league is talking about in Russell. And fairly enough, one GM said, I would not be surprised if he has success in Pittsburgh because of the culture and system. Another GM said, quote, to me, he would be a tier 5 guy if he wasn't for Tomlin. An offensive coordinator said, Tomlin is a psychologist. He can push the right buttons. However good Russell Wilson can be, Mike Tomlin will figure it out. Here's the other thing. So the league is mixed on what he is. He is not the same player. And that's what we do as fans. We take the best of what a guy was, and that is imprinted and implanted in our memories. He is a solid tier 3 guy. Now, the funny thing about this whole thing about Fields or Russell Wilson is Justin Fields is a tier 4 guy. But what Justin Fields is a guy with a higher ceiling. And we're going to talk about a ceiling when we talk about this offense, and we're talking about this change in the quarterback. And a tier 4, according to Sando, is defined as a guy who can be an unproven player, not enough information for voters to classify, or a veteran who ideally would not start all 17 games. And that's fair. That's what I think right now what Justin Fields is. I think he's a player that's still ascending and growing. Ideally, you don't want him to play all 17 games because if he does, you're probably not going to be very good. However, if he's rated 24 and Russell Wilson is rated 22, what the league is saying is there's not a discernible difference between the two. Other guys in tier 4, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Bryce Young, Sam Darnold. So this whole argument, what's better? Arsenic? What's worse for you? Arsenic or strychnine? What are we talking about here? Both of these guys aren't really good. These guys are tier 3, tier 4 guys. There is no magic elixir or panacea in the bottle for either one of these guys. When I'm looking at this, I look at a couple of things. I don't know if Coach T, and jumping at Richard Kokorian's comment, Coach T is considering Russ with a 4-2 record. Something's up. We know Coach T. I'm not going to speak for the man. What I'm going to say is this. From me watching football for all these years, and I could be way off. Again, you're checking out the new standard. Should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? I think when teams, solid teams, good coaches evaluate quarterbacks, part of the evaluation and making the decision if a guy is going to start is one, wins and losses, offensive efficiency as measured by points per game, and ball security as measured by turnovers. Your quarterback is responsible for being the driver or helping drive in a large way, winning games, scoring points, and not losing you games in the form of turnovers. So that leads me to a question when I'm thinking about this, and I want to ask you guys on the chat in terms of offensive ceiling as measured by what is the maximum points per game given this roster. Do you think either one of these quarterbacks can produce? Who has a higher offensive ceiling when you look at this criteria? And my argument would be the offensive ceiling, given the Steelers' offensive line, the higher ceiling is probably Justin Fields. When you look at this offensive line, particularly going up against the Jets, you've got Zach Frazier out week to week, probably going to come back after the bye week. You have an offensive line that's giving up roughly 3 sacks a game. Putting Russell Wilson back there would be punishment. So in terms of offensive ceiling and being able to get the maximum squeeze or juice out of the squeeze out of this offense, I think it's Justin Fields, even with the plays that he turns down and leaves on the field. David Todd said it on X. Look, it's not like you want to pick a quarterback because he runs well. No, quarterback has to throw the ball as well, run the ball as well. But my thought is where this offense is from a personnel and an injury standpoint, you can't put Russ back there with that offensive line. I'm not sure Russ will survive it, let alone raise the offensive ceiling. You know, one negative thing about Russ as well was Russ takes a ton of sacks. Ton of sacks. Russ got sacked over 50 times last year. And part of Russ's secret power was his legs and his mobility. A lot of that is gone, and he's coming back off of a calf. So when I look at this, I don't think the offensive ceiling as measured by points raises a lot if you put Russ in there. In fact, I think it doesn't. I think the offensive ceiling is higher than Justin Fields. And I hear a lot of people talking about, well, Coach Tomlin should just play Russ to see what he looks like. Let me just say this to all of you. Your employers are not paying you to come to work to just try some shit. They're not. They're not paying you to come try some shit. Like, they're not. They're paying you for your expertise. Part of Tomlin's expertise is making the best decisions in terms of a starting lineup and a depth chart to try to do what? Secure wins. There's no experimentation. Maybe if you want to experiment, it's a special teamer. Maybe it's Roman Wilson. You want to give him 3 or 4 snaps, sees if he executes the play as not the primary wide receiver. Okay. You don't experiment with a quarterback. Oh, let's just see what he brings us. And you can't make that whole evaluation based on one game anyway. That logic was asinine to me. Clearly, in my opinion, and Ali Howard's species also said employers hate paid training. Excuse me, they absolutely do. I just don't see why there's much of a controversy. And that's why I asked on my TikTok, Steelers True or False, my TikTok channel, I asked the question, is Steeler Nation the most insufferable fan group, fan base in the National Football League? Steelers go to 4-2. All you hear is they need to replace the quarterback. After they score 30 points the first time in the last like 17, 18 games and go to 4-2, we're talking about quarterback controversy. Are you kidding me? They might not score 30 again this year. After the week that they scored 30, we're talking quarterback controversy? Has anybody seen Broderick Jones block? And we think that an old guy coming off of a calf can survive Broderick Jones's 6 or 7 brain farts? He might get planted and stamped in the first quarter. And I definitely don't think the first game to come back as against PFF's #1 overall defense, New York Jets. That's not the first game to come back. I know it's a home game, but when you talk about these next 2 opponents, you got both New York teams. Both teams play solid to very good defense. So if I were making the choice, and that's not to say that Justin Fields is a tier 1 guy. He clearly isn't. There's stuff that he misses. There's stuff that he turns down. But given the offensive line and where they're at, his legs help give that offensive line a little bit of life and that offense a little bit of life. That offense, I don't think, survives with a guy who's possibly statuesque in the pocket because they're not necessarily executing the executed call plays well. They need mobility and pocket mobility as the grease to get some of this offense to move. So I just don't see it. What I think Tomlin is doing is what coaches do, what good coaches do. They run interference. It's a smokescreen. Should Russell Wilson not get first? Should he get first string snaps in practice? Absolutely. You got to get him ready. If you want Russell Wilson to be your #1 starter, do it after the bye week. Get him fully healthy. I suspect if the Steelers lose the next 2 games and go into the bye 4-4, you'll see the switch then. Or of course, if Justin Fields gets hurt, I mean, the easiest way to make the transition for Tomlin is if Justin Fields gets rocked this Sunday and he misses a couple of weeks. And that is the natural transition to the #2 guy. But I don't think Tomlin is going to make the change given the fact that they're 4-2. They scored the most points they have this year in their last game. And he's not turning the ball over. But like Richard Krikorian said, if they go out there and lose 2 primetime games in a row and Justin Fields does not play well, he's getting a hook. And if he does, his stint as the quarterback for the Steelers will have been successful. They would be 4-4. Even if they lose the next two, he's going to get them to the bye at 500, which means you are still surviving in the division. And in the second part of the season, when your schedule is tough, maybe you bring on Russ. Maybe that's the time. Because also at that time, you might get Zach Frazier back and you might start getting healthy as well over these next couple of games. Wilson gets some snaps, gets acclimated to the offense. So it makes more sense to me if Justin Fields struggles that Russ is the starter after the bye. But bringing Russ back against the Jets, hell no. I think that would be cheeks. That would be a terrible move. But we don't know. But I think Coach T is running game. I think he's running game, and he should run game. Make them prepare for two guys. Plus, also, I don't think the Jets defense is a defense that you just want to come back against, man. I don't know. If he can make the landing softer for Russ, he should. But again, this clamoring over whether to start Russ, I mean, come on, man. Both guys are the left cheek and the right cheek. I mean, both guys are cheeks in their own particular ways. We're not talking about prime Russ. If we were talking about prime Russ, Seattle Russ that was cooking, I'd be like, absolutely. But right now, Russell Wilson is a line cook. He's a line cook at Big Bear Diner cooking flapjacks. That's what he is. I mean, he's a line cook. And Justin Fields is a line cook, but he's young and he's learning with the potential to be an executive chef. That's what he is. I mean, that's where it is. I mean, as Nick would say, Tomlin has to decide who is the taller midget. And that's a great way to put it. Who's the taller midget? I mean, what are we talking about here? We are talking about Russell Wilson. Again, a guy that is getting $40 million to not show up in Denver. They drafted Bo Nix, who is probably the worst starting quarterback in the National Football League. They are happier starting over with the league's worst starter than have Russ play quarterback for them. That's how bad it was. So be careful of what you ask for, because you just might get it. And I know I've ranted a long time on this. Real quick, some matchups I'm looking at for this game. Sauce Gardner against George Pickens. I want to see how the Steelers do with Quentin Williams, given the fact that Frazier is out. That's going to be tough. What I've seen in terms of the few games that I've watched for the Jets are a little bit susceptible on the perimeter and running the football. I think there's an opportunity for Warren to get loose and get active in this game. And I think their linebackers are a little suspect in coverage. Buffalo took advantage of that in the game last week. I think this is going to be a tough game. In this game, the Steelers are 2-point underdogs, maybe 2.5-point underdogs at home. And so I think it's going to be really tough. Let me jump into this comment here from Kevin Motley. Let me get your predictions too. Jump and give me your predictions before I give mine. If you want to hop in, again, you're checking out the new standard. Should Mike Tomlin let Russ cook? Hell no, he shouldn't let Russ cook. And so Kevin Motley said, we are 6 weeks in and ranked 26 in passing with only 5 passing TDs in the red zone. I think we can see what Russ can do at some point, to be honest. I don't think you have to let's see what, there's a reason. Right now, I'm gonna just ask you, Kevin, and I want you to respond in the chat. You're 4-2. Okay, you're 26th in passing yards with only 5 passing TDs. You're 4-2. You only got 5 TDs in the red zone. You're 4-2. You just scored 30 points. You're 4-2. I'm just trying to get a sense of When does winning games, when do stats trump the ultimate stat, which is 4-2? That's all I'm saying. Another matchup that's going to be key in this game is they got to face Devontae Adams. Now that Devontae Adams was traded to the Jets, Tomlin made a very funny comment about he's been preparing for Devontae, over the last 2 weeks. And so it's going to be interesting. That's an interesting matchup too. Joey Porter getting some work against Devontae Adams. That should be key. Also, we'll be getting pressure on Aaron Rodgers, making Aaron Rodgers uncomfortable. How will the Steelers deal with the curl flat concepts? That's going to be another big thing in this game. Jason C had a comment. The Arthur Smith offense is based on running the football. Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I want to say about this whole thing is with Russell or Fields, given what the Steelers are on offense, given their offensive weapons and giving their offensive line, I don't think either player raises the ceiling too high. So if I think Justin Fields raises the ceiling, it's slightly higher than Russ because he would take far fewer negative plays, in my opinion, because of his mobility. But I think the Steelers, with their current offensive line and personnel, would need a tier 1 to a high tier 2 quarterback to make this an offense that can compete for a championship. The defense is championship solid if TJ Watt and Cam Hayward stay healthy. The offense is not. And you would need Mahomes. You would need tier 1, tier 2 to elevate this group. The Steelers are just not that talented on the offensive side of the ball. Let me jump into a last comment here from Kevin. I feel you. I just feel like they see something in practice that we aren't seeing, and they are. I'll guarantee you, you're 1,000% right. You're 1,000% right. They are seeing something in practice that we aren't seeing. And that's why we have to trust a veteran coach like Tomlin that he will make the right decision. It may not turn out and be the right decision, but at the time, long as he uses whatever information and solid logic to make the decision, I'm fine with it. Kevin also chimed in. Russell might read defenses better, and with the return of Jalen Roman Wilson, we have more weapons to dump it off to Russ, if he has to get the ball ready. I understand. I understand. The offense is not great. The record is fabulous at 4-2, though. And that's all I'm saying is if Justin struggles next couple of games, 4-2, they're 4-4, you got to make the switch. If they're 4-4 and he rips it up against the Jets and the Giants, where he has like a quarterback rating in the above 100, he's the starter. He's the absolute starter. But, Justin in packages like Slash, that's a good analogy. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. But the Steelers are 4-2, going up against a big matchup against the Jets. My prediction for the game, and let me jump into Ali Howard Species' prediction. He predicted 33-15, the good guys. And I'm going to pick, just because you know how I do, I'm going to pick the Jets to win this game 17-9. I think the offense will struggle. It's a tough defense. And the bandbox and the calls for Justin Fields to be replaced as a starter will grow higher. 17-9 Jets. That's my prediction. With that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.